I'm back with Dr. John DeMartini, an international speaker and business consultant. He's written several books, including The Heart of Love, and How to Make One Hell of a Profit and Still Get to Heaven. Dr. John, we were talking about issues of health just before the break. A number of years ago, I read that your wife passed away of cancer. How do you make sense of her illness in light of these ideas of the laws of attraction? Do you ever think about that?
Sure. My wife had, she had a sister that also had cancer, so I think she had a genetic predisposition. She also had, she was in 9/11. We lived in Trump Tower in New York City. And so when 9/11 happened, that was a major shock. And many times cancer has a precursor of stress and shock kind of an environment. And then her mother had passed away, and her sister almost passed away, and then there was a couple other events that were major events. And I think the shock and the stress of that was a big part of it. And then she had an injury. We live on a ship, and one of our homes is a ship. And so we were traveling around on the ship, and she fell and slipped and injured herself. And the cancer actually ended up, and the locations where she injured her, she fractured some vertebrae. And that's exactly where the cancer is. So I have a feeling between the combination of the stress, the combination of the overall shocks that she went through, and then a combination of the injury, I think, was part of the precursor for her cancer.
Yeah, but I mean, some skeptics might say that, well, according to some of your principles here, that she should have, or people like her, should be able to think their way out of an illness like cancer. You're saying not necessarily.
Well, I think in this situation, this is going to sound kind of interesting, but she saw her mother as she was passing away. And when she did, she looked at me, and I looked at her, and she says, I don't want to go that way. She was about 81 or something like that. And she didn't want to sit in a retirement village and be a pterodactyl, as I call it, this frail person. And we talked about it on the way out of there. And she says, I don't want to go that way. I want to die young. I want to die beautiful. And when she said that, there was a sense that that was her real intention. She was 59 and a half when she passed.
That's very young.
Very young. And she was also very beautiful, and that was important. In fact, just 2 days before she passed, she got herself fixed up just to take a picture of beauty. And I think that there was a little bit of an unconscious intention behind that. I really do, because she never asked for any treatment. Even though they said it was kind of too long anyway. There's nothing they could do. It may just prolong it. But she didn't ask for treatment. She just embraced it, and she realized that it was her destiny, and she honored it, and it was a really amazing experience going through this. Challenging, but amazing at the same time. So I don't know. I think that there was a combination of all the stresses that went on, and also underlying sense that I want to be beautiful when I go. I don't want to be in a retirement village and die incapacitated. So
there's clearly things that, as you said, are in a sense destinies that we cannot necessarily wiggle out of. That they're allotted to us at some level. Well, we have choices maybe to how we deal with them.
There's been a discussion for millenniums on predestination, free will, and things. I always say that when you're grateful for life, and you don't exaggerate other people with infatuation or minimize people with resentment, and you love them for who they are, you don't need to change yourself relative to them or change you relative to other people. And in the process of doing it, you just love life. And when you do, then your intention matches what is. And if we could say that your free will, you're really free, and divine design or predestination kind of match. And I say that that's the state to live in, where you're not fighting the universe. You're grateful for life. You love life. Your intention is inspired. You're doing something you really love to do. And you're increasing the probability of working with the universe instead of fighting it.
Well, I mean, some of your material seems to, your book on making money and being successful seems to work for a middle-class North American lifestyle, of how do I get more access and more stuff and how do I get successful. What about the third developing world, a person who has nothing? They're not going to ever make $1 million. They're just trying to get enough food to survive that day. Are these ideas transferable to them?
Well, it's interesting. I happen to be on Carte Blanche, which is a television show in South Africa, and out of Johannesburg. It goes to 40 million people, all the way into the Middle East. And it took the book, How to Make One Hell of a Profit and Still Get to Heaven, to the number 1 and 2 with Harry Potter, book sales. And now I have a school in the headquarters in South Africa, in Johannesburg. And I teach kids from the townships. I went and spoke at Khayelitsha, which is near Cape Town. They have 2 million people that live in a square mile. And I went in there and taught them how to save whatever they're making. And it does apply. And it's amazing. I have a kid he's 14 years old. He has 9 brothers and sisters. There's no mother and father. They've died of AIDS. And he is saving a portion of his money, 15% of his money. And he only makes $200 a year. So it really applies. It doesn't matter how much money you make. What matters is how you manage what you make. And the values you hold have a lot to do with it. Because if you don't value money, you're going to keep spending it and never save it. If you value saving it, it'll save.
Most of the great religions of the world, the great traditions and religions of the world, seem to have a sense that they advocate for a sense of the broken, the lost, the last, the least. And Jesus talks about it's hard for a rich man to enter the kingdom of God because he's so consumed by all this kind of stuff. Some of your teaching seems to go against that, to say, no, it's about you pulling yourself up by your own bootstraps and moving ahead. How does that square with some of the religious and spiritual ideas?
Yeah, I love that question. I get asked that a lot. I always say that if it was more blessed to give than to receive, then the person you're giving to who's receiving without giving is cursed. So I always say that it's wiser to have fair exchange. Now, I'm a firm believer in doing a service for people. I mean, why would you earn money if you don't do a service? But I believe it's fair exchange. My observation of people who do great services and receive great rewards have a clear consciousness on both parties. But when somebody does something for nothing or gets something for nothing, there's an incomplete. So I'm a firm believer. I try to teach even the kids in Africa and the people in Asia that I work with to don't ask for something. Don't ask for entitlement. Go for empowerment. Go and figure out a way of how to find another person's values, how to serve them, and ask for reward, a fair exchange. And when I see kids do that, and I see young people do that, I watch them grow. And it doesn't matter how much they start with, because what happens is when you manage money wisely, you get more money to manage. And there's kids there that make $200 a year. And I've watched what they've done with their life, and they're saving money, and they're building their wealth again.
You had a very fascinating book that I had a chance to peruse last night on personal relationships, and you talk about some myths, how to find the perfect soulmate, these kind of things. Let's talk about that right after the break. More with Dr. Demartini right after this quick break.